Hello friends and welcome to Hitbullseye. My name is Manish and in this particular series we are continuing with where we left off the last time. So इस पूरी वीडियो सीरीज में हम डिस्कस कर रहे हैं the political science 12th standard NCERT. From that point of view we are discussing the political science topics. So we have already discussed what was Cold War, how the world was bipolar and how the bipolar world changed into a unipolar world, and after that how the contemporary world order started to take shape. और आज हम उसी सीरीज में कंटिन्यू करते हुए we will take a look at the contemporary South Asia. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon ताकि हम जब भी ये वीडियो शेयर करते हैं वो आपको उसकी नोटिफिकेशंस मिलती रहें. So we have already discussed the formative part of this entire thing, but if you haven't watched those classes, even then it's fine. This topic can be treated as a standalone topic as well. So just to give you a brief background of what we have already discussed, we have discussed that how the world post Second World War was dominated by United States on one hand and the Soviet Union on the other. The United States was a capitalist country, whereas the Soviet Union characterized socialism, which was the state control of resources. So it was a sort of a Cold War in a sense that it never came to become a full-scale hot war. But it does not mean that both these countries never came face to face with each other. There were several instances. For example, the Cuban Missile Crisis of the 1962. Right? So that was when the world realized how how dangerous or how jeopardizing it is to be sitting on a stockpile of nuclear weapons. And it is that exact theory of nuclear deterrence or mutually assured destruction that kept these two countries from coming face to face with each other. और इसीलिए इन दोनों countries में कभी भी direct full scale war नहीं हुई. This is what is believed. But by the 1970s and 80s, the socialist system of Soviet Union started to collapse, started to show its signs of wear and tear, started to show inefficiency, corruption, dictatorial tendencies in administration and things like that. So because of that, in 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed, in the sense that the economy collapsed and the country was split into 15 different countries. And coincidentally, just when I'm speaking to you and I'm talking to you, telling you all these facts, Mr. Mikhail Gorbachev, who was the last president of the Soviet Union, he just died, a few years before this, a few hours before this, in fact, even today, Mr. Mikhail Gorbachev has died, and he was the last president of the Soviet Union. He implemented the famous policies in what we call the policies of glasnost and perestroika. Glasnost and perestroika. ये दो पॉलिसीज थी जो मिखाइल गॉर्बाचेव ने सोवियत यूनियन पे अप्लाई की थी. Glasnost means openness, that the country or the Soviet Union will open towards the world, because जब उन्हें सोवियत यूनियन का प्रेसिडेंट बनाया गया तो उन्हें पता था कि सोवियत यूनियन में क्या क्या प्रॉब्लम्स हैं. इकोनॉमिकली दे वर नॉट एज एडवांस्ड एज द वेस्टर्न यूरोपियन कंट्रीज और यूएसए, and there was a growing clamor for democracy, for liberty, for innovation, for all those kinds of freedoms that the Western democracies enjoyed. So due to that, he adopted this twin principle of glasnost and perestroika. Glasnost means openness towards the world, and perestroika means economic rebuilding of the entire Soviet Union. But it came as too little too late, because by that time many people living inside the Soviet Union had already made up their mind to to be detached from Soviet Union. तो जब Soviet Union disintegrate हुआ 1991 में, Mr. Mikhail Gorbachev was the last president of Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union collapsed and got split into 15 different countries like Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, then you have Georgia, Ukraine, so many countries, and Russia was the biggest, let's say, biggest country that came out of the Soviet Union and is purportedly believed to be the successor of the Soviet Union. So that is how the world went from Cold War or a bipolar era. Bipolar means two poles or two centers of power. It went to a unipolar world. Like post 1991, जब सोवियत यूनियन डिसइंटीग्रेट हो गया, उसके बाद अब यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स ऑफ अमेरिका became the sole superpower. It became the sole superpower. So it was like if there are two strongest people in a room and one of them dies, then the one who remains in the ring is the strongest person in the room. So just like that, USA de facto became the strongest or the most powerful country in the world, and there started the era of unipolarity. That means the world now had just one power center, and that was United States of America. तो अगले कुछ सालों तक, let's say for the next 10 to 15 years to be specific, so 1991 से लेकर somewhere around the mid 2000s, the world saw that how the United States of America was a world power, was a superpower. I don't know how many of you would know this, पर आप में से कई लोगों ने एयरलिफ्ट मूवी देखी होगी. एयरलिफ्ट. So this is a movie about the first Gulf War, जो कि 1991 में हुई थी. So Iraq had invaded Kuwait, or basically Saddam Hussein was the president of Iraq at that time, and he had invaded Kuwait due to some reasons. तो कुवैत को बचाने के लिए यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स ऑफ अमेरिका सेंट इट्स फोर्सेस, एंड दैट वाज द फर्स्ट टाइम व्हेन द वर्ल्ड सॉ हाउ लीथल एंड हाउ व्हाट यू कैन से एडवांस्ड द यूएस मिलिट्री वाज. इट इज नोन एज अ वीडियो गेम वॉर, बिकॉज उस टाइम पे टेलीविजन्स वर बिकमिंग अ नॉर्म इन एवरी हाउस होल्ड. तो टीवी पे लाइव टेलीकास्ट की गई कई जगह से वो वॉर, और उससे यूएसए को अपनी सुपीरियोरिटी दिखाने का मौका भी मिला. सो रिसेंटली द सोवियत यूनियन हैड बीन डिसइंटीग्रेटेड, एंड it was a sort of an opportunity for USA to showcase its power to the world and to show that it was the most powerful country in the world, militarily and economically as well. So it did it really well, So airlift movie us pe based hai. So the meaning thereby that starting from 1991 up till 2000s, mid 2000s, that was a period when the world knew what unipolarity meant. Anyway, so then came, fast forward 9/11. In 2001, the 9/11 attacks happened. On 11th of September, the world saw Twin Towers in New York coming down and becoming, a rubble of, what you can say, debris within a few minutes when two aircraft hit those two buildings. And this was the biggest attack on the US soil after Pearl Harbor. That was in 1945 during the Second World War. And this incident enraged the US so much that it went on, invading spree into Afghanistan, into Iraq, into Sudan, and whatnot. So they launched what they call the global war on terror. So again, the hegemony continued, the unipolarity continued. However, after a few years, that thing seemed to have ended. 2000s, late 2000s तक आते आते यूएस की डोमिनेंस थोड़ी कम होनी शुरू हुई. Then in 2011, Osama bin Laden was killed. Osama bin Laden was killed in Abbottabad, which is in Pakistan. Again, इस पे भी एक बहुत अच्छी मूवी जो है, Oscar winning movie is there, which has shown the entire operation. So the name of the operation was Neptune Spears. Neptune Spears. And in this, Osama bin Laden was killed in a night raid. The name of the movie is Zero Dark 30. It's a wonderful movie. It's like a documentary of sorts, actually. Zero Dark 30, which shows the entire operation in detail. So after this particular operation, it was like the war on terror was almost over, because जिस इंसान के ऊपर सबसे ज़्यादा allegation थे, that person had been killed in that particular attack. So it was a, what you can say, it was a notion that now the global war on terror is somewhat over. हालांकि ये ऐसा नहीं है, terrorism is still there, but more or less it was like the US had avenged what had happened in 9/11. Now, during the same time, now since we are discussing unipolarity, so unipolarity started in 1991, and this is how it displayed itself through these wars, through these invasions. So USA kept continuing with this thing. Now, since the early 2000s, there were several centers of power that had started emerging. So it's not like कि एक unipolar world चल रहा है तो बाकी कुछ नहीं हो रहा है बाकी spheres में. There was a lot happening in so many other spheres of the world. There were other countries who were vying for the position of the top superpower in the world, just like China or countries like Russia, or let's say there were groupings which were vying for that particular position. And it is good for the world. You know, if we have multiple centers of power, it is always better. It's like democracy. The world is a democracy. So no one person should have the ability to become dictator or should have the ability to authoritatively rule over the world. That is not how the modern world works. The modern world works where centers of power are multiple and they keep a check on each other. That's how the principle of checks and balances work. So it is in the interest of the global population if there are multiple centers of power. And India also believes in that philosophy. So now, then we saw contemporary world politics in which we saw multiple centers of power emerging, जिसके बारे में हमने पिछली क्लास में डिस्कस किया. We saw G20, you know how the G20 emerged. We saw the emergence of China. We saw the emergence of BRICS as a grouping, ASEAN as a grouping. So these are like the world is moving from unipolarity towards multipolarity. But now in the next step, today we are going to discuss contemporary South Asia. So like contemporary world politics, we discussed about these groupings, but now we are going to discuss about contemporary South Asia. Why we are discussing contemporary South Asia? First, because it's a specific topic in your book, in your syllabus, and secondly, because it concerns India. If we talk about how the world is divided, you know, in regions, South Asia is a particular region, and in this particular region you will find 8 countries: India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, Myanmar, and Sri Lanka. If we do not count Myanmar over here, then it can be Maldives, because sometimes Myanmar is counted as a part of Southeast Asia, you know, so not really a consensus about it. But if we look at the groupings, then we see that SAARC में Myanmar एक member नहीं है, but Maldives is a member. You know, so these are the 8 countries which are the South Asian countries, and in this India is the largest one. But we will try to have a fluid definition of South Asia, not a very rigid one. So we'll try to understand which 1 or 2 countries can be a part of South Asia sometimes, and they sometimes are not considered to be a part of South Asia. So contemporary South Asia concerns us because of their proximity to India. Now, if we talk about India's foreign policy in general, and we are going to talk about the contemporary South Asia, like the South Asia of the 21st century in the last few years, we're not going to talk about the perspective of the 20th century. Of course, I'll give you some background though. So India's neighborhood policy has neighborhood first policy as a, you can say, what you can call, it is something that is very close to Indian government, whether it is the current dispensation or the previous one. So it is characterized by the fact that whenever a new prime minister takes oath, one of the first foreign visits of the prime minister is towards a neighboring country, and that has always been the norm, whether it is the 2 terms of the Prime Minister Modi, or before him Dr. Manmohan Singh, or before him Prime Minister Vajpayee. This has always been the case. So for the last more than 20 years or so, India is following neighborhood first policy, because they say, and it's a very good saying, they say that in geopolitics you cannot change your neighbors. So whether they are your enemies, whether they are your friends, the fact is that you cannot change your neighbors. So it's better that you learn to live with them, You know, you can fight, you can be friends, but you have to learn to live with them. Unfortunately or fortunately, that is the case. और जब से इंडिया को ये बात समझ में आई है, we have a neighborhood first policy. You know, in general parlance, as an individual, we can change our neighborhood. You know, we can just shift our home from one place to another, but it is impossible in international relations. We cannot change our neighbors. We cannot shift countries from one place to another, of course. So neighborhood first policy comes out of that. For example, the Prime Minister Modi invited heads of state of all neighboring countries at the oath taking ceremonies, both the occasions. दोनों बार जब Prime Minister Modi प्राइम मिनिस्टर बने, उसकी ओथ ली, दोनों बार सारी की सारी नेबरिंग कंट्रीज के प्राइम मिनिस्टर्स को इनवाइट किया गया था. बट द फर्क जो उसमें था वो ये था कि 2014 में सार्क कंट्रीज को इनवाइट किया गया था और 2019 में बिम्स्टेक कंट्रीज को इनवाइट किया गया था. द डिफरेंस बीइंग दैट इंडिया वांट्स टू आइसोलेट पाकिस्तान. नाउ विद पाकिस्तान वी हैव अ लॉट ऑफ हिस्ट्री. इफ वी टॉक अबाउट द 1948 war, 1965 war, 1971 war, and 1991 Kargil conflict, 1999 Kargil conflict. We have a lot of history, but whenever we try to put that history behind, something afresh happens. Like 1 year after the 1999 Kargil conflict, then Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee traveled to Pakistan by bus. You know, President Musharraf of Pakistan came to India, all that bonhomie and everything. But the next year, a few months after that, there was an attack on Indian Parliament. Similarly, in 2008, the Pakistani foreign minister was in India, and at that time, the Mumbai attacks happened on 26/11. Then, you know, if you talk about this government, there was Operation Hot Pursuit in 2014 in Myanmar. Then in 2015, you know, Uri happened, of course, and as a retaliation we did surgical strikes in Pakistan. Then again in 2019 the Pulwama attack in J&K took place. As a retaliation we did the Balakot air strikes. So that has, you know, somewhat upset the equation in the last 6 to 7 years, and due to that India tried to isolate Pakistan by not inviting its prime minister or president in the 2019 oath taking ceremony. Why? Because Pakistan is a member of SAARC, but it is not a member of BIMSTEC. So we'll discuss about that also. उसके बाद Project Vaccine Maitri. That means India sent lakhs of vaccines for COVID vaccines free of cost to many of its neighboring countries like Bhutan, Sri Lanka, Maldives, Nepal, etc. as a goodwill gesture. There is also a doctrine that you should know about. It is the Gujral Doctrine. The Gujral Doctrine was propounded by the former Prime Minister I.K. Gujral, and according to this doctrine, whenever India is dealing with any of its neighboring countries, we should be the net givers, not net takers, which means that we should not think about reciprocity in our dealings with these neighboring countries. You know, हमें सिर्फ देने के बारे में सोचना है, उनसे हमें बदले में क्या मिलेगा ये एक्सपेक्ट किए बिना इनको देना है. There are two reasons behind that. One is that India is the largest country in the South Asia. So it's like, not like a big brotherly attitude, it's like an elderly attitude, which is a positive thing to say. Second reason is that since you cannot change your neighbors, having good relations with all these neighboring countries can have various benefits to India that cannot be quantified in monetary terms or in some other terms. Like whenever India needs assistance, these countries are there, you know. So it's like having a regional influence in a good way. That is the reason, that is the logic behind the Gujral Doctrine. Then we had robust relations with Afghanistan pre-US withdrawal. अब हालांकि relation उतने अच्छे नहीं रहे जब से तालिबान आया है. But China and Pakistan are two exceptions to this particular policy of neighborhood first. We are trying to have good relations with them, but of course, with Pakistan, the problem is of terrorism emanating from the soil of Pakistan, and with China, the problem is its expansionism. We are seeing the particular border standoff for the last more than 2 years now. So this is a problem, and we have to deal with it because they are neighbors and we cannot change the neighbors. Right? Now SAARC, as I told you, so this is South Asian region, and India, as you can say, occupies the better part of it, and all these countries are just like smaller, you can say smaller areas that occupy South Asia. So SAARC was formed, you know, SAARC, SAARC was formed in 1960s, but Afghanistan was the latest entrant in 2007. तो 8 members हैं इसके, but the India-Pakistan bilateral disputes always overshadow SAARC, और इसलिए SAARC की पिछले कई सालों से कोई मीटिंग भी नहीं हुई है. और इंडिया इज नाउ डिलिबरेटली मूविंग टुवर्ड्स बिम्स्टेक टू आइसोलेट पाकिस्तान. 2014 में जब प्राइम मिनिस्टर मोदी बने थे तो अपनी ओथ टेकिंग सेरेमनी में उन्होंने सार्क के सारे प्रेसिडेंट्स प्राइम मिनिस्टर्स को इनवाइट किया था. बट फास्ट फॉरवर्ड 5 years 2019 उन्होंने सारे के सारे बिम्स्टेक लीडर्स को इनवाइट किया, जिसमें कि पाकिस्तान के लीडर मौजूद नहीं थे. सो इट वाज अ वे ऑफ सेइंग दैट वी वांट टू डील विद ऑल अदर कंट्रीज, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. We have no problem with these countries. Not even with Afghanistan. लेकिन हमें पाकिस्तान को isolate करना है. It was a way of, indirect way of saying that. So what is the logic behind, you know, inviting all the leaders but removing that one? So it's like strategically India played, you know, invited all the BIMSTEC leaders that excluded only Pakistan. बाकी सभी countries के leaders जो हैं वो same थे, SAARC में भी और BIMSTEC में भी. तो 2015 में उड़ी अटैक के बाद नेक्स्ट ईयर जो सार्क समिट थी वो पाकिस्तान में होनी थी 2016 में, बट इट वाज बॉयकॉटेड बाय ऑल. दिस इज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट फैक्ट. इंडिया के सपोर्ट में सार्क के सभी मेंबर्स ने वो समिट बॉयकॉट कर दी थी बिकॉज दे एम्पैथाइज्ड विद इंडिया. दैट मीन्स दे ऑल अग्री, दे ऑल you know come they all have a common ground that yes there is terror emanating from Pakistan. So इसलिए उस समिट को सभी कंट्रीज ने बायकॉट कर दिया था एक्सेप्ट नेपाल बिकॉज इट वाज द चेयर. तो जो चेयर होता है लाइक जिसने वो होस्ट करनी होती है, दे डू नॉट बायकॉट इट एज अ कन्वेंशन. अदरवाइज सार्क की बाकी सभी कंट्रीज ने इंडिया को सपोर्ट किया था और वो समिट बायकॉट कर दी थी कि हम पाकिस्तान के साथ किसी भी ग्रुपिंग में साथ नहीं देंगे. और अगली समिट अभी तक नहीं हुई है. सो फॉर द लास्ट 7 years देयर हैज बीन नो सार्क समिट. सार्क इज ऑफिशियली नॉट ऑफिशियली, अनऑफिशियली डेड नाउ because of the India-Pakistan disputes and it is unlikely to be revived. तो इसकी जगह जिस ग्रुपिंग ने कंटेम्प्रेरी साउथ एशिया में ले ली है दैट इज बिम्स्टेक. बिम्स्टेक ने अब इसकी जगह ले ली है. सो ऑफ कोर्स अगेन सिमिलर ऑल द कंट्रीज, लेकिन इसमें जो 2 कंट्रीज नहीं हैं दोज आर अफगानिस्तान एंड पाकिस्तान, और जो एडिशनल कंट्रीज इसमें आ गई हैं दे आर म्यांमार एंड थाईलैंड, which of course we have again good relations with. हालांकि म्यांमार में सिचुएशन अब थोड़ी डिफरेंट है. बट बिम्स्टेक इज बे ऑफ बंगाल इनिशिएटिव फॉर मल्टी सेक्टोरल टेक्निकल एंड इकोनॉमिक कोऑपरेशन. इसे 1997 में बनाया गया था और इसके हेडक्वार्टर्स हैं ढाका, बांग्लादेश में. सो अगेन कॉमन मेंबर्स आर बांग्लादेश, भूटान, इंडिया, नेपाल, श्रीलंका. ये 5 मेंबर्स हैं कॉमन. म्यांमार और थाईलैंड आर 2 new members, like 2 members which are not there in SAARC but are the members of BIMSTEC. So SAARC minus Pakistan, Afghanistan and Maldives को निकाल के BIMSTEC बनता है, right? So अफगानिस्तान के साथ हम अलग से डील कर रहे थे यूएस विड्रॉल से पहले तक. मालदीव्स के साथ हमारे अच्छे रिलेशन हैं. तो मतलब सिर्फ पाकिस्तान को हमने आइसोलेट कर दिया विद दिस पर्टिकुलर मूव. उसके बाद अगर कुछ 3-4 साउथ एशियन कंट्रीज की बात करें कि उनमें कंटेम्प्रेरी क्या चल रहा है. सो द प्रॉब्लम और आई वुड से द सिचुएशन इज प्रॉब्लमैटिक इन मोस्ट ऑफ द नेबरिंग कंट्रीज ऑफ इंडिया राइट नाउ. चाहे हम म्यांमार की बात कर लें, चाहे हम नेपाल की बात करें, और इफ वी टॉक अबाउट श्रीलंका, हर जगह पे या तो इकोनॉमिक क्राइसिस चल रहा है, या फिर वहाँ पे मिलिट्री कू हो चुका है, या वहाँ पे डेमोक्रेसी जो है वो अच्छे से फंक्शन नहीं कर पा रही है. So India in this entire scenario always looks like a pole star, you know, always looks like a country which is the largest of the lot, which is the most diverse of the lot, which has the potential for maximum disputes in this entire region, but still it continues to be the only successful experiment in the region with democracy. And that is the beauty of the idea of India. Despite so many challenges, despite so many diversities, so many different sets of ethnicities, you know, political differences, economic problems, still the country sustains, and that too successfully We have never seen a military coup. We have never seen a major economic crisis of the sort that Sri Lanka is seeing right now. We have never seen a kind of a military coup that Myanmar has witnessed. And we have never seen that much of a delay in constitutional processes as Nepal has witnessed. So we are working really well, all thanks to the Constitution of India and the people who have come to occupy the positions in India. म्यांमार में अच्छी भली डेमोक्रेसी आई थी. ऑंग सान सू की had won the elections fair and square, but this man here, he thought that democracy is coming back to Myanmar, तो हमारा क्या होगा? So he staged a military coup, arrested her, and now she is behind the bars. That is the sorry state of affairs in Myanmar right now. Afghanistan की बात करें, so Afghanistan, USA had come to occupy Afghanistan after the 9/11 attacks, but despite ruling over it for 20 years, they have not been able to, they have not been able to restore, good situations in Afghanistan. And now they have left Afghanistan, right? And they have left the country much worse than it already was. Now the Taliban is back in power and they are wreaking havoc on the people. So India के पास stake क्या है? In contemporary South Asia, if India wants to be relevant in Afghanistan, what are the things that it can do? It should protect its investments that are in billions of rupees. India ने roads बनाई हैं अफगानिस्तान में, dam बनाया है. In fact, the parliament building of Afghanistan is built by India in the hope that there will be democracy in Afghanistan. So India hopes to protect all those investments and its interests in Afghanistan. Preventing a future Taliban regime from being a pawn of Pakistan. हम ये बिल्कुल नहीं चाहेंगे कि पाकिस्तान से जो टेररिज्म आ रहा है उसमें अफगानिस्तान भी उसका साथ देने लग जाए. That is the second thing we have to ensure. Third, making sure that the Pakistan-backed anti-India terrorist groups do not get support from the Taliban. ये तीसरा stake है इंडिया का, तीसरी चीज जो इंडिया को ensure करनी है. And India has always said that whatever peace process is there in Afghanistan should be owned and operated by the people of Afghanistan. तो वो जो भी होगा वो हमें मंजूर होगा. But the problem is that there is no proper democracy in Afghanistan. We are seeing a lot of news these days कि वहाँ पे schools बंद हो गए हैं, the journalists have fled Afghanistan, there are human rights violations, there are public executions, Sharia law being again in force in Afghanistan. So it's like the clock has been set back in Afghanistan by at least 25 years, and that is a sorry state of affairs. We were hoping that Afghanistan will be a new entry into Central Asia in a positive way, trade and people-to-people exchange, investments and things like that. But it's like after US withdrawal, the country has been pushed back in time. So we are losing that sort of foothold in Afghanistan that we had some time back. So contemporary South Asia, Afghanistan is not really a part of the equation as of now for India. With Bangladesh, everything is going fine. Just last year, Bangladesh celebrated 50 years of its creation or liberation, one and the same thing, because India played a decisive role in creating Bangladesh. So it was earlier East Pakistan. तो जब वहाँ के लोगों ने बांग्ला और बंगाली स्पीकिंग के नाम पे एक अलग कंट्री की डिमांड की, there was an outpour of refugees into India. So India had to take a stand, and at that time Indira Gandhi was the prime minister in 1971. So we fought a war and we liberated East Pakistan and it became Bangladesh. So on that occasion, they had invited the then Indian president, Mr. Ramnath Kovind, and 50th Victory Day was celebrated. 50th Victory Day was celebrated, right? And then now we have Nepal as a final country. So with Nepal, we have had really good relations, except a few ups and downs in the last few years. But now for the last 2-3 years, there have been some contentions like on the border issue. So as you can see in this map, there are 2-3 areas like Kalapani, Lipu Lake and Limpiadhura on which there is certain dispute regarding territory. But that too I think we will solve. I don't see it as a big problem. It's just a minor irritant in the relationship rather than a dispute. This is because of the varying interpretation of the origin of Kali River. See, जब भी आप geographical coordinates को बाउंड्री डिसाइड करने के लिए एक डिटर्मिनेंट मानोगे तब तक कोई डिस्प्यूट नहीं हो सकता. बट द मोमेंट वी स्टार्ट चूजिंग नेचुरल बैरियर्स as for setting up boundaries, it creates problems because natural boundaries can change over a period of time, just like a river. A river can change its course. The origin of a river may be disputed. So because of that, due to varying interpretations, things are taking an ugly turn, but I'm sure it will be resolved very soon. So when we talk about contemporary South Asia, there are a lot of problems in many countries that are bordering India, but very soon we hope that these problems will get solved, and India will play a leading role as far as contemporary South Asia is concerned. And democracy and its proper functioning in all the neighboring countries is in India's interest. And India, as far as the global scenario is concerned, India is always an advocate for a multipolar world led by a multipolar Asia, in which India, of course, is a pole. So that is the kind of thinking that Indian foreign policy has, a multipolar world led by a multipolar Asia in the 21st century. So with that, I would call it off. Thank you so much. अगर आपको ये class valuable लगी हो, please hit the bell icon, subscribe to our channel, and also give this video a thumbs up. Also, if you have any thoughts, please share with us in the comment section. We'll keep covering many more topics every week. Stay tuned. Thank you and take care.